Alexander the Great. Ladies and gents, we're finally here. But where do we start with this? I mean, the only guy in history that never lost a battle, the guy who conquered the biggest empire history has ever seen, the guy considered and worshipped as a living god. We could go on for days. He was the inspiration of Caesar, Napoleon, and all the other conquerors that came after him. It's time to take a look into the life of Alexander the Great. Alexander saw the light of day for the first time on July 21st, 356 BC, in the city of Pella, capital of the Kingdom of Macedonia. Second son of King Philip II, he is the only son of his mother Olympias, Queen of Macedonia and Princess of Epirus. She's gonna tell him during all of his youth that Philip isn't his father, but that Zeus himself is. No matter what his mother will try to put in his head about Zeus, he grew up admiring his father. Philip was a great king, admired by all his soldiers for his many successful conquests that added a lot of money in the banks of the city. But he's also scared of him, because he's afraid he won't be able to surpass him in terms of successes and accomplishments when he will get the throne. But even if he is from royal and or divine essence, it doesn't matter, because like the Macedonian traditions wants it, Alexander must fight against all the other boys of his age to start his military formation and learn how to become a brave soldier. But with a bigger amount of pressure since he is the heir to the throne. So he has to prove to his father and companions that he's able to ensure his own defense. Alexander had the misfortune to lose only one of those battles, which convinced his father that he is incapable and that he's not worthy of his attention, which permitted Olympias to take care of her kids' education by herself. During this time period, starting from his 7th birthday, he will be stuck with his overprotective and tyrannical mom, where she will teach him literature, music, devotion to the Greek gods, and frugality, while also making him train physically. He will be stuck in that weird, completely opposite dynamic between his parents for a while. Around those times, he will read 2 books that he will completely be obsessed by, even when he got older. These books are the Iliad and the Odyssey, written centuries ago by the Greek author and poet Homer, talking about the mythic stories of the ancient heroes that he idolized, Achilles and his friend Patroclus, that were said to have fought and died in the Trojan War. It's also during this time period, when he was 12, that the first part of his legend happened. His father Philip received a merchant who came in the country to offer him a combat horse that was taller than the most of his species and was worthy of joining force with the king on the battlefield. Philip, really interested by the beast, tries to go on top of the horse. But the animal is simply uncontrollable and nobody that tried was able to ride it. At this exact moment, Alexander, watching the scene from afar, approaches and asks his father if he can try to ride the horse too.
Dad, can I try to ride a horse?
Why would I let you have your chance? You can't even defend yourself in a one-on-one combat.
To bite myself if you don't let me try it.
He let the prince have his chance after Alexander said he was ready to pay the horse himself. So the heir approaches the big black horse. Having realized the horse was scared of its own shadow, he turned it gently to make him face the sun, and, against all the odds, he gets on top of the animal and is the only one that's able to ride it.
Look at him, that's my son. Look for suitable kingdom, my son. Macedonia's too small for you.
For the first time, Philip was proud of him. Alexander didn't know it yet, but he just met his first and loyal companion, his legendary horse of war, Bucephalus. Philip realized he needed to take charge of his second son's education since Alexander is the only one he considered as his successor. So he looked into the south to go get the greatest philosopher of the era in the other Greek independent cities, the one and only Aristotle. Now at the age of 14 years old, Alexander will receive the best education available on the market for the time, in company of his new friends including Hephaestion and a certain Ptolemy. From 342 to 340 BC, Alexander had the chance to receive his education from no other than Aristotle with his new Macedonian friends. Together they will learn about nature, moral, and a lot more. But of course, Aristotle is well aware that he has the next king of Macedon under his wing, and he's going to do everything in his power to make him one of the greatest kings. Since Philip is going on military campaigns a lot, Alexander started to consider his new teacher as a surrogate father, and likewise for the great philosopher who will transmit to him the love of a father, But that's not all. He will sharpen his spirit, teach him how to observe and understand his environment in every situation possible. Teach him how to be a good politician, rhetoric, and above all else, will transmit him the thirst for knowledge. Of course, simultaneously, the young prince continues to get his physical training to build him into a great soldier. His natal Macedonia was in a particular situation at the time with the other independent Greek cities like Athens. First, because they almost all switched their political regimes to democracies, while Macedon didn't end their monarchy. And second, because in the recent past, there was a war between Greece and the invincible Persian Empire, in which Macedon decided to join forces with, resulting in a loss for the Greek cities. The Acropolis of Athens was put on fire during the Persian celebrations, and the other cities never forgave Macedonia for that, even 2 centuries later. They started to consider them as barbaric. Aristotle, being born in Macedonia and having lived a long time in the southern cities, had learned to consider his people as semi-barbaric Greeks. He had the conviction Greece could be unified again under a single, powerful, and absolute Macedonian king that wants to make Hellenism triumph throughout the world, if his remarkable personality of superior individual manages to embody it, and that as nothing of a tyrant. Aristotle wanted Alexander to be that king he dreamed of, so he made sure to print this idea in his brain, while also making sure to make him hate the Persians as much as he does. The last lesson, the most important one, and the most necessary to existence itself, that he taught to the future king, is what he called the virtues of friendship. He considered this lesson that way because for him, it ensured cohesion in political thinking and in battle. At the end of those 3 years, on the side of his master Aristotle, Alexander and his companions had now all 15 or above and were back in the Macedonian court, ready to face their future. Back in Pella, all of his friends start to have their first love stories. Alexander isn't really much interested in that. But that's a very bothering thing for his parents, since he is the heir to the throne and will need to give a male child to the crown to ensure his family's bloodline and dynasty. To try to fix the issue, they made sure to make him spend the night with Calixan, courtesan and professional prostitute that was a very beautiful woman in his bed. After many hours of convincing him, he finally accomplished his mission under the eyes of Philip and Olympias that were secretly watching to make sure it was gonna happen. From there, he became a man to their standards. His father started to accord him a lot more importance and completed the royal education of his only heir, in which he's already able to perceive a bright future full of potential. But at the dawn of his 18th birthday, the great cities of southern Greece were beginning to be worried about the intentions and ambitions of Philip, the barbaric king of Macedon they despised so much. So Athens, Sparta, Thebes, and other Greek cities formed a coalition and declared war to Philip. The battle went on in Chaeronea. If the independent cities win, this will be the end of Macedonia. If Philip wins, the cities will never be independent again. This is also the first big war Alexander was taking part in. The king gave him the commandment of the Macedonian cavalry. In his battle of the war, he will have to face more than 30,000 soldiers, including one of the most dreaded legendary armies of his time, the Sacred Army Battalions of Thebes. They are feared that way because the battalion is composed of 150 couples of men in relationships with one another, which made them very efficient on the battlefield because they were wishing for only one thing: to not lose their lover in battle. On this day of August 2nd, 338 BC, both sides are positioning their troops on the battlefield. Philip takes the commandment of the right Macedonian flank, and Alexander with the cavalry takes position on the left flank, right in front of the Sacred Battalion.
Round 1. Fight!
Philip takes his troops in direction of the left enemy side on the Athenians.
Fall back!
But after the hit, turns around to come back. Athenians took the bait and are rushing in his direction, completely opening half of their center and their left side. Alexander, seeing the opening, lead a charge with the companions on the Greek center. He destroys them and orders half of his men to follow him to get behind the Thebans, while the others directly jumped on them. Alexander, with his cavalry, managed to ambush them and kill them all. At the same moment, Philip stops his troops and ordered his center to help him with the Athenians. They took care of the Athenians, and the Macedonians just won against their Greek compatriots. His victory against the battalion in the bigger victory of Macedon over all the Greek cities was considered by all of his father's soldiers like the ultimate decisive battle of the entire war, which gave him more military recognition and glory than his father in the war. Philip was starting to realize that his son was probably already devoted to a greater destiny than him. He started to despise him, until the day where things got out of hand. During the wedding night of Philip with his seventh spouse, the father of his new wife, really happy, said, "May the new bride give an heir worthy to the throne of pure Macedonian descent," which suggested that Alexander was a bastard and therefore not worthy of the throne. Alexander, hearing that, jumped from his chair and threw a glass on it. "What do you dare to insinuate? I am the heir to the throne," he shouted furious. Philip, completely drunk while seeing the scene, asked his son to apologize, which Alexander refused to do. Philip, out of his mind, took his sword and started to run towards Alexander to do something really not okay. But he stumbled on the table and fell on the ground. Alexander, with all the style in the world, retorted, "Here is the man who was preparing to go from Europe to Asia, and who, going from one table to another, lets himself fall." Philip then kicked out Alexander and Olympias of Macedon. They went to Epirus in the family of his mother with a bunch of his friends until things were going to calm down, leading to a couple months later during a battle against the northern barbaric tribes, where he saved the life of Philip in combat. Directly after, a public reconciliation was organized in Pella on the 21st of October 336 BC, at the same time of the marriage of his daughter, Alexander's only full sibling, Cleopatra. But at the beginning of the ceremony, Philip is killed in front of everyone by his own bodyguard. It is a couple seconds later, in these bloody circumstances, crying the death of his father on his body, that Alexander was proclaimed King of Macedon by the members of the court on site and his companions at the age of only 20 years old.